what's happening, Andrew Seeley? You don't look like Mark Willie. You're so clean cut and proper looking.
It's such a big change. Happy BS Friday, Dave. How are you?
Yeah. I'm doing. Believe it or not, I'm doing great, man. It's been a long week at the IWBC and Greenbuild Conference, and I took the red eye home, and I spent pretty much all morning working. So, looking forward to going to sleep at some time this afternoon.
Yeah, you should try it.
Yeah,
a little bit of rest helps.
Yeah, sleep is definitely a good thing. So, all right. So with that said, you are somewhere in Texas. Andrew, why don't you give everybody a quick update on yourself real quick? I know you have, I thought it was 7 buildings. And he goes, no, Dave, it's 8 buildings, fully off-grid, luxury living somewhere in Texas with the rattlesnakes. Give us an update.
Well, it's good to see everybody. I'm Andrew Seeley. G-Pod Americas is our company. We're a Texas-based design and delivery firm. And so I'm coming to you just north of San Antonio. We have an off-grid project here that we use to showcase what we're doing. And we're just kind of showing some off-grid construction, how to do things a little bit differently. If you want to build with renewables, you can do that. And we're rolling out some new designs, and check us out if you want to visit.
Okay. All right. So modesty is definitely your thing, right? Give me a break. You're not only working or building new design. I mean, you have a whole test facility that you're building out there, and you're touching every single part of that building. You're working with some of the best influencers that have been out there. Steven Basic's been out there, right? Yep. The flashing folks. Yeah. I mean, they've all been out to your property. So what you're doing is pretty damn special. So don't let anybody fool you out there. If you want to learn about science of living off grid and building luxury product off grid, Andrew's the guy.
One of them. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah. Anything I can do. All right. So let's get into it, man. We got a special guest today. We're going to play with clay. We are. If I knew, I would have showed up with a clay mask on today. You ever do a clay mask? They do that all the time, Andrew, at the spa. You should go.
I'm seeing it looks kind of cool. So, I like clay.
I like clay as well. So who is our guest today?
Our guest today is Lisa Morey from Colorado Earth. And she's a PE, so professional engineer, and an architectural designer. And she's got a really amazing history I can't possibly do justice for, because she's been everywhere, it sounds like, doing all kinds of cool stuff. And I like, it's a pretty big history, lots of talent, lots of developing products. So when people are trying to work locally, when people are trying to reduce carbon footprint, you got to use materials. So the thing I know about that she's doing is using overburden from a site near their facility, and they're making building materials out of industrial waste, essentially. I mean, it's quarry. So we got a rock quarry here. I get some of their waste material. I try to use it, but what she's doing is really cool.
It is really cool. I mean, Lisa Morey, she's an owner operator. She's a professional engineer, an architectural designer. She was living in New Zealand, right? Back in the day, right? I guess since 2000, Lisa started building with Adobe bricks. In New Zealand, and their design build firm has nearly constructed over 50 homes. She has a book, Adobe Homes for All Climates, that she released, it looks like, in 2010. And her mission is to scale the natural building industry in Colorado now. Well, that's a great place to be doing it, right? By offering an affordable wall system. We're going to learn all about it here. So what do you think, Andrew? You think we should bring Lisa in? We got some more dirt on Lisa, but I'm not going to bring it up just yet. I told her I wouldn't, but I might.
Yeah,
I might.
Do it. Bring her on.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. I love it. Give me some dancing. What's up, Lisa? Lisa Morey is on the show. All right, Lisa, how you doing today?
Hey, good. This is just right about the right vibe that I need on a Friday for today. So.
Yeah, to get you going. I mean, because you're gonna end up like your dog back there.
He's crashed out.
That's where I'm going. I like, there is nothing more in this world that I'd want to be than snuggled with that dog, nice and warm.
Right.
I'm tired. So, Lisa, we ask everybody that comes on the show that we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or Andrew Seeley will call somebody in your family, maybe the big burly guy that you work with that we're going to see some videos on. But you only have 2 minutes to do it. The floor is yours.
Wow, right on. So yeah, played with Tinker Toys, right? Who didn't play with Tinker Toys in the 70s or 80s or
right.
so? You know, it got me into construction, design, fascinated with architecture, exposed to the natural building scene. When I finished architecture and engineering school and moved to New Zealand, followed some projects for a paper I had to write, which was making mud bricks or adobes down under in New Zealand. And that's just really what captivated my interest in the buildings world, and felt like I really found my niche, and started, you know, designing and building and putting on workshops and teaching, applying natural plasters. And that I spent about 5 years in New Zealand doing that in the early 2000s, and then eventually moved back to the States and started Colorado Earth in 2017. And I have since kind of gravitated to the compressed earth block industry as I look for kind of scale and providing great product. So
yeah. Well, you know what? I think this is such a hot market. And I've been learning about clay recently just because of some of my travels globally. And there's pretty much clay everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very sustainable, and it's good for your face. You can just walk around, spray some water on your walls, and wipe your face, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty magical stuff that we try to figure out what to do with and how to work with it, and not too much of it, and right amount of it for what we do. So,
well, why don't we do this? There's a short video where you guys are kind of joking around about the clay, somewhat joking around. Why don't we show that, and then let's get into what you're really doing on a day-to-day basis out there in your quarry. What do you think?
Sure thing. Yeah, that's all
right. Let's do it then.
So what do we have here, Lisa?
This is clay. You know, it's such fascinating material. It's so simple. And I was reading an article the other day that scientists think that the birthplace of life on Earth could have started from clay. I mean, imagine that in here it could be containing the proteins and all the necessary DNA to produce life.
In clay?
It's just amazing.
In clay. Well, clay is really like a feldspar. So when you take a look at what clay actually is it's a metamorphic mineral that is actually morphed over the millennia in the Earth's crust on the planet Earth through its geologic cycles. And the magic of clay just doesn't have to do with its platelets. The clay platelets has to do with this electrostatic charge. There's a positive and negative charge, and that positive negative charge is always at force. So how we get clay to stick to clay, it's not just a mechanical bond, but it's also an electrostatic bond. So there's electricity, there is mechanical bonding. Pretty amazing stuff, wouldn't you say?
Fascinating.
I have never. So tell me, I need to know how much of that was true or not true in those comments, or was it all false?
All true.
It's all true. Yeah, it's all true. I mean, Andrew, you know a little bit about clay too from your kind of work with Adobe, I heard, and
yeah,
you know, I think that's it. It's other than aggregates and sands are, you know, a different shape particle, right? And as he mentioned, clay are platelets. They're flat and they can expand and contract. So they have the ability to absorb and release water vapor. So when you hear about like expansive soils, and you know, that's kind of a lot of the clay in our foundations that we're trying to mitigate that heaving and whatnot. So anyway, clay is pretty magical, and for the walls, the material in the walls, it can absorb and release water vapor as well.
Well, why don't we look at this 48-second Colorado Earth video as well, just to give some other insight to this. Sound like a good plan?
Sure.
Then we're going to get hopping into this.
We believe in sustainable construction materials. Our mission is to create an industry shift towards more environmentally responsible resources. We are Colorado's premier manufacturing facility of unfired earthen masonry. Using local sand and clay, we produce both compressed earth blocks and adobe bricks. A custom line of equipment from Ital Mexicana in Mexico City allows us to produce 250 blocks an hour with the TerraPress machine. We know buildings can last for generations and can provide more than just shelter, but also a greater sense of well-being. Colorado Earth is committed to creating a healthier built environment and invites you to join our vision of truly sustainable communities.
All right, so this is what we're going to talk about then today, and I think, how did you go from Adobe Homes in New Zealand to owning and operating Colorado Earth and building clay blocks? I need to know. Like, you just don't wake up and go, "I'm going to build clay blocks," do you?
No, but I believe the universe somewhat guides you as to what you're kind of maybe inclined to do. So, I studied engineering. I was interested in whatever green building meant in the time, the late 90s, and then I found a little art school in New Zealand to study architecture. And as I mentioned, I had to kind of follow a project, and there was a builder in New Zealand building this way. So I jumped on board. I became a designer with him, started taking pictures of all the houses going up for this paper I was writing. And I didn't know it, but I was forming the basis of a book that I would later publish in 2010. So that Adobe Homes for All Climates is really written from the experience that I gained in New Zealand, and then, after that as well. So it's just, I think it's a really humble product. There's something about it that draws me to it from its like humbleness and then also our connection to its history. So we've been working with this material for over 10,000 years and in constant use of it. So I look at all these kind of what I consider building fads or trends and things. And here I'm working with a product that is, as old as some of our buildings still standing, and it's estimated that 40 or 50% of the world's population lives in a home or building with this material, often because that's all they have to build with, but certainly it's serving them well in many ways. So yeah, I'm fascinated with it. It's got me. I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm in.
Yeah, well, I like it. So, Andrew, you've had some experience with clay in your past, and there's, like you said, you're probably one of the very few. Even though 50% of the population maybe lives in one, you don't run into a whole lot of people that have actually built them.
Yeah. I think I can relate to what you're doing because in high school I got into working with clay, like a pottery sort of style. So I learned a little bit of the chemistry, not very much, and glazing and all that kind of stuff. So the heat side of clay is fascinating. But then when I started in construction, I got to work with the natural kind, and it's pretty fascinating. So yeah, I was saying earlier that I'm one of the few people I know that's had a job making Adobes by hand, and we just did it, in New Mexico. Very primitive job, but it was fascinating, and I'm interested to see how, I think at this time what you're doing really impacts the choices people have for building materials at a time when we need better local building materials. So everything you're doing is amazing. I think we're used to working on site with clays, trying to mitigate the expansive side, so stabilize the moisture content, do all your proctors ahead of time to figure out what the PI of the clay is, what's the plasticity index, what moisture content do we need in the pad, all this kind of thing. We try to do that here in Texas because we have clays that are problems for engineers, but you're taking that and turning it around and making a product out of it, which is amazing, and it's local. So
yeah,
great job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I work with some great people who are, showing up at the building code conferences and reviews, that just happened last month or so, and saying, "Hey, we still use this building product. Don't nix it from the building code."
Yeah, we
like
need
you
it.
do.
Yeah.
So what? So let's stop and jump into that for a minute, right? I mean, is that a real conversation where they're looking at, maybe taking clay out of the building code? And I guess I would lead into that. Why are not more people using it?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So we are in the IBC section 2109, earth and construction. And, in there is Adobe, and the compressed earth blocks that I'm making fall into the Adobe kind of part of the code. So yeah, there is kind of have been some movements as we revise the codes to get rid of what's no longer they feel necessary.
Yeah.
And these advocates, fortunately, in the industry that I work in, show up at these hearings and say, actually, yeah, we've got projects all around. We've got building code officials that are approving this product. We get list of these people's names and support from them. So fortunately, we are still stay in the building code. New Mexico has their own building code for this. California is more stringent, but they have their set of building codes. Boulder County, there's some counties in Arizona that have specific codes. Texas, so there is certainly a lot of folks, and I feel like it might even be growing here in more recent awareness. But why are people not using it? I mean, I think if we go back, I always kind of look back at what I learned from the after World War II, where they were trying to put in a lot of housing cheaply and quickly, and it was the timber frame modality, and that really stuck. We kind of thought that was a good idea, and so and it's just been hard to kind of monetize dirt, right? Like this stuff is free; it's right under our feet, and it's been a hard organization without any kind of industry backing, right? Any trade support from a major like the concrete industry or the lumber industry, have these support. So we don't have.
You mean with support, because you got the chemical companies, you got a lot of people that they need to make their blocks and do what they have to do. So with clay, you don't need. What do you need?
Well,
what do you need to make clay block?
Yeah, so the clay is only around 20% of the mix design. So it's typically kind of a sandy aggregate. Silt fakes it like it's clay, but it's not really clay. It doesn't have all those kind of cool electrostatic kind of properties to it.
Yeah.
So we're looking for kind of a right mixture of sand and clay together, which is often found in our overburden of quarry activities when they're mining rock and aggregate. That's what's happening, what I use. So, we liken kind of ourselves to the early concrete industry days where they're trying to do the magic mix and what exactly, are the standards and what's kind of strength and properties are they trying to reach. We're similar, right? In terms of everywhere we set up, we're working with new sandy clay quarry material, and we have to kind of do our compressive strength test and our modulus of rupture to get us through the building material codes, and then we can add admixtures, right? So I'm adding lime. A lot of folks stabilize with Portland cement down in Arizona and New Mexico. They're using, bitumen, asphalt bitumen, and it's and now there's a whole opportunity to look at the other admixtures that we can add in, from the waste stream. Construction waste stream, there's opportunities there. As we're looking at embodied energy, there's a lot of opportunity to reduce the use of cement, or in my case, lime, and what else can be used. So I'm actually on some grants and studies to do all this cool work.
So I love this. You're going to say something, Andrew?
Oh, I'm just wondering, what's the primary, so if you were to switch from lime, some different admixture, what are the likely candidates for materials that you're looking at now? And it may depend on where you are, right? I think what you're doing is very local. So globally, you could have different designs everywhere, like you were saying. If it's not lime, what are the likely choices?
Yeah, well, I can't give all the secret sauces or ideas away.
How about that?
But I will. I mean, just because I am on some, these are some of the steps of making the blocks. So, I am on, like I said, on a grant with some national lab here to actually do some research and study. You're probably aware there's a lot of look at mycelium and can we grow cement from algae and all this cool stuff in the biochemical world. So, I'm really kind of integrated into that scene.
Is that National Lab NREL?
Yeah.
I just had dinner with those guys.
Those guys are great. Yeah, really.
They are great.
And there's also here in the state of Colorado looking at the construction waste stream, There's currently not a byproduct or use for gypsum drywall. So, you know, new construction, we're putting in all this gypsum drywall. They nicely cut it, they nicely package it, and strap it together for the haulers that take it to the landfill, right? So we're looking at kind of just chewing that stuff up and adding it as, if nothing else, as a fill, right? So any kind of like of this carbon offset work that we can do to reduce what goes in our landfill. And keep the same properties that we need. So I think there's just a wide range of opportunities in admixtures, and as you mentioned, it's going to be regional of what's available.
All right, so now we're gonna now the guy that knows the least about building science is gonna be asking science questions. Honestly, though, so let's talk about the properties. Let's talk about the zones that one would use this in. Could you use it in all the zones within the United States, or is it more suitable for certain areas of the United States? You know, walk us through, like, why would, other than it being sustainable, which is a very good reason, as a homeowner or somebody that, you know, believes in sustainability, but also doesn't want to have big utility bills, give me the pitch on why I should be building using clay.
Yeah, well, I had to ask myself this too when I arrived in Colorado. I'm like, it's cold here sometimes, you know, and I never had to insulate, for instance, in New Zealand. Yeah. And so, you know, if you look at kind of that 40 or 50% population I mentioned, it's all through kind of the, you know, close to the equator, right, of where this product has been used predominantly. So when we look at colder climates, we have to look at other wall systems that incorporate insulation, because basically the blocks are really good at thermal mass, which is its ability to store heat and release it, acting as a thermal battery. Those properties are dependent on kind of the width and the thickness of the material. But, you know, we also need that thermal insulation to act as a blanket, you know, properly applied to the exterior of the wall, or in my case, in the middle of the wall, to kind of buffer on those really cold days when you're not kind of getting a whole lot of solar gain or any kind of other heat source gain. So we have got compliance through our wonderful energy code. There's different ways to get compliance, and we got compliance in Climate Zone 7 in Steamboat Springs. In that kind of, the wall system that we're using is a 6-inch block on the exterior, a 6-inch block on the interior, and a 3-inch cavity for loose fill insulation. So that 15-inch wide wall, we can go 2 stories with it, sometimes higher in some, you know, seismic regions. And yeah, so it's a great application also for, you know, I've worked with the Passive House community on some studies where we, you know, I showed up in Colorado, I'm going to start a business, I got some dirt, you know, I'm going to get some machines, like, let's make sure this works here well, right? And so I, you know, got a client, built a beautiful house for them in Castle Rock, and put some sensors. I put some sensors into the wall. So I started tracking heat exchanges through the wall and also on the exterior and interior, try to understand how these walls are performing. So as anticipated in the summer, these walls stayed constant 68 degrees, no mechanical cooling, right? Doing what they do best, keeping that heat out from the outside and really moving it very slowly through the house in a dynamic situation of which we live in, where the temperatures are going up and down. And the house stayed very comfortable. Now in the winter, we can see the effects of solar gain, and we can also see the effects of when they built a fire, you know, a fire in their home. So the walls, boom, charge up, heat up, and really sustain and hold that heat in the wall for a long time, again, releasing it slowly. So anyway, back to the study I did with the Passive House folks, they interpreted that to say, hey, these walls are great for when you have kind of a massive load, like a school or a church, or where everyone's coming in at the same time, right? To really keep that more stable environment inside. So that's what's been understood here from the data side of how these walls perform in our kind of colder climates. So Andrew, are you going to now switch to clay? Because it sounds to me like there's more advantages to a clay wall than a regular thermal break, sheetrock, and wood wall. Would there be?
Well, I think they all go together. And in Lisa's case, she's saying she's got the cavity between the two wall section, so interior and exterior of the clay material. So I think it all goes together. You know, it's back to the what climate are we working in? What location are we working in? Who are we using but who are we making it for? You know, who's the client and how are they going to use it? So I think it just depends, right? It's the old question of what are we going to do in that location? And I mean, it sounds like she's got it figured out and she's measuring. Yeah, that's a thing. Like if you try something in a climate where there's some historical activity, we have a reference point and we can try to tune that, and measuring what we're doing is a great way to do that. That's perfect. So, I mean, she's an engineer, of course, Lisa's going to do that.
So talk to me about who's buying your product. Are you a builder as well, or are you just a manufacturer of these blocks?
Yeah. So I recognized I couldn't just make the blocks and hope the rest goes peachy, right? Because this is a kind of niche market in which there's not a lot of not all architects and engineers know how to work with the material, design the material, and the builders are not as familiar with it either, right? So I find myself not only trying to grow a business, but really grow an industry. So I offer design, engineering, architecture services. I have a team that does the mechanical design, reviewing geotech reports and getting kind of all the pieces needed for a building permit. And then, have a facility in Golden that produces the blocks and get those blocks palletized and shipped to where they need to go. I also provide Adobe mortar, so the same raw material used to make the blocks can be used to lay the bricks, just to keep a like to like working together on that. As far as the build goes, because I'm providing services, all around, as far as, Missouri to Wyoming to, obviously throughout the kind of Front Range of Colorado, I try to partner with builders or general contractors to let them know really what they need as a mason. They need, I'm trying to really just get the walls off their feet, and any mason that can lay any block can lay these blocks. These are just a little bit different size, and the wall system it's not a veneer. These blocks are not meant to be necessarily just veneers. They're a structural wall system without the need for any other framing member. So there's just, you follow the kind of plans and where the electrics go and plan for that while you're building the wall. So I have a great network of masons here locally in Colorado, and then get those onto the projects, with the builder. So working with the town of Superior and a community called Sagamore, and so this is really helping back the build back from the Marshall Fire. That's a lot as it currently looks like. And so, these blocks are fireproof. They have gone through fireproof rated testing for commercial projects, and dirt doesn't burn, right? Well, clay does burn, but what happens to it? It comes as a beautiful fired material.
Vitrifies.
You're right. In our case, with the blocks, we do not need to fire these blocks. There's no need to fire them. We put a lime plaster coating onto the exterior, and that is its shell. That is its skin that's going to, endure the test of time and give that protection for freeze thaw, what it needs. But yeah, so it's a fireproof material, and that's a really big selling point to the folks who have lost their homes and were evacuating their home while it was on fire. Devastating.
So
really
does.
traumatic. Yeah.
So if your home goes through a fire, that's kind of like going through the kiln. Does it just make your house stronger, other than the parts that, like the windows, that may not hold up? But does the rest of it cure to be stronger?
I would love actually to build a shell and then set it on fire. But here's what's going to happen.
Wow, that'd get some YouTube views.
Yeah, let's get some YouTube.
Let's do it.
But here's what's going to happen is that after 8 hours, at least this is what happened in the lab, we built a wall. We set it on fire on one side for 8 hours. The first half inch turned to a glazed fired brick finish. Wow. There was no sense of heat on the other side of the wall during the entire test.
Yeah, I think a lot of A regular fire is not going to do that.
A regular fire is not going to do it. Yeah. So, I work with a lot of folks kind of in the who have sensitivities to toxic mold or who have gotten really unhealthy from their living environment. Lime and the pH of the blocks that I work with, the pH is mold is not allowed to grow on these with the pH of the system that I'm working with. So, a lot of folks that are looking for healthy homes, are checking us out too. So.
What is the cost difference between a clay block and a concrete block? Is your pricing better? Is it more just because you don't have mass production of it? Tell me.
Andrew, what's the cost of a concrete block these days? Like, I don't know.
I haven't done a CMU project. I just drove by one and I was wondering the same thing. I haven't priced CMU lately, so I have no idea.
Yeah, they're probably under $3. I mean, we're actually pretty competitive to any other masonry wall system. When you take kind of all the layers and the hits that wall has to go through to be a finished wall, we're the same as pretty much as AAC, the FAS wall system, the ICF system. We're all really in the same ballpark, the main difference in my mind is embodied energy. The embodied energy, and people are like,
it's huge.
Not a big deal, man.
It's huge deal.
It is a big deal, and it's understandable. I understand why people don't think it's a big deal in terms of comparison to operational energy, because there's a really clear ROI on insulation bats and foam, and on saving $100 or whatever it is a month on energy cost. But to what extent are we doing those savings for the energy that it takes to create those materials? And there's a much greater understanding now in the Architecture 2030, initiatives to really look at embodied energy more carefully in these next 20 years if we're going to make some changes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. Hey, listen, I put it up there. I want somebody to tell me how much a CMU block costs. Why would you use CMU after you see this, right?
Yeah,
nothing against the concrete industry. I'm just
right. What Lisa's doing could theoretically be done anywhere. Most locations have some clay. I mean, a very small island maybe doesn't have enough deposits or something. But I think, Lisa, what you're doing applies everywhere, and where there's a subsidy for concrete, it's really difficult to compete against it. I've lived places where concrete's, or at least the cement part of it, is subsidized. Sometimes even the aggregate, the rock crusher is owned by the government, and so everybody gets pricing based on that. So it's hard to compete against the subsidies, but for sure, I'm an Adobe fan, even the classic style, and I think what you're doing, Lisa, is a great product for today. And I think it's just as easy to work with. Like you said, all the masons would know what to do with it. And you've got the grouting material, you got everything that goes with it. It's all same. It's all great material. It's got much lower embodied carbon. Even if you're using lime, it's still radically, I don't know what those numbers look like. You probably do, but that's a radical.
Well, I'm actually currently doing a life cycle assessment of the production of blocks from cradle to gate.
Amazing.
So I hear in my spreadsheets and clipboards, taking track of how many gallons of diesel it's taken to run the skid steer, and the forklift, the propane for the forklift, and bags of lime and the raw material, and what's my output, right? And so I've got a consultant lined up here to do the life cycle assessment, and eventually an EPD, or an environmental product declaration, which is like a nutrition label for how carbon friendly these materials are. So,
and everything needs to have that. All the materials need to have that, right? We need to know up front when we're doing a project what decisions we're making, and the upfront carbon doesn't have the same policy support, because it's not at the end of the equation. It's in the beginning of the equation, and we can delegate that to somebody else's problem. Well, it's already there on the shelf. We don't have to think about it. We're starting from zero, but we're not. There's the bulk of the calculation is actually usually for the inputs. So just to get it to the shelf.
Yeah.
So I saw Daryl's very active today, Huddleston. He says it's going to cost you 2 deers at Lowe's.
That's
Yeah,
deers.
that
well,
time of year.
That's 4 back straps.
that's right.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
but
$2.
that doesn't account for the the concrete truck that's got to show up to fill that plus installation, drywall, etc. Right. So it's not a same to same. These
No.
I've gone through the brain damage of trying to compare, wall system to wall system, and the cost of the walls of a structure is around 15 to 20% of the cost of the entire structure, right? So we're not, we have a little bit beefier foundation system. We are, in line with some of the other masonry costs, but we are going to be more than timber frame. But hey, we're getting a much more durable material that's going to be around for 10,000 years. So
yeah. I love it. Let's say hello to a couple people real quick. We're coming up on our time out there. I told you it just goes fast and we have fun. And if anybody's out there and they want to go visit Lisa, you should go visit Lisa. She'll show you how to do what she does, and I'm sure put you to work too. So we already had Dahlia, my daughter's name's Dahlia, Daryl Huddleston saying hello. He's a big supporter and a fan. Do you know Daryl?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't know him either.
Yeah, maybe I do. I don't know.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Hey, Banu is with us. What's happening, Banu? Delani? All true, he said. I know that's when I was asking how much of what you were telling me was true. All the way to the facial cream. I love it. And of course, we got Buzz out there. Fappy Friday got the dirt today. For those that don't know Buzz, he really does not have a spelling problem. We replaced the F with PH for Passive House, so he's a pretty intelligent guy. Just putting it out there for you. John Magnan. Shouldn't you be out building a modular home somewhere, buddy? Stopping in the middle of the day to work, stopping your work to come see us. Thank you for that. This reminds me of a project Michael Graves did in Egypt. He saw clay and cheap labor and used traditional designs to move the air. Very cool. See, Lisa said, that means there's some research coming up. I got to look into that one kind of conversation. We already talked about the $2 at Lowe's. Jennifer, has Chris Magwood or the Builders for Climate Action run the Colorado Earth LLC blocks through the BEAM calculator? That's a great idea.
Hey, Jennifer. Yeah. So I know Chris Magwood. He's kind of a great, colleague of mine. He knows the work I'm doing, and the life cycle assessment is going to be, he has not run my blocks through the BEAM calculator that I know of. But, my first step, I believe, is to get the LCA done and see where I stand there. So, but I'll reach out to Chris about that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. All right. So, Lisa, what have we not talked about? I saw on your website that you have all kinds of resources there. There's technical papers, there's white papers that give you all the data on what you're doing. But if there's something out there that you really just wish people knew about you, about the blocks, personal or business, whatever, now's your time.
Yeah, certainly. I know this is a passive house kind of community, and I really respect the work that happens in this area. I am trying to host I've been asked to host a webinar about kind of the differences in between thermal mass, passive house strategy, ICF, a lot of the kind of techniques that we have to consider now, because I think homeowners and builders are overwhelmed, perhaps confused, and there's a lot of information out there to digest.
Yeah.
So I'm, putting together a panel right now. Hopefully, having a webinar. I'm going to record it and share it as much as I can with folks, because I think the biggest challenge that I endure from the passive house community is that they can't interpret thermal mass in their simulations and models, and because it's challenging to do so. So we, if my wall system were to get approved through the passive house, I've been told that I would need to add 8 inches of insulation to the wall, and I just can't swallow that very well, because I've done this data and research on how these walls are. It just doesn't fit with my kind of my thoughts, right? So that's what I just want to understand, where the limitations are. And
yeah, for sure.
Well, Lisa, isn't it kind of a climate question? I mean, the load, the energy that goes into the thermal mass and how it's released, when it's released. I mean, that's just a simplifying the equation challenge, right? So if you've got different climates, you probably have different conditions to work with, and the thermal mass might mean something. Where's the heat? How is it being dissipated? Or isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because every site's different, and every do you have trees around the property, and are they deciduous or evergreen, and what kind is being shaded? So it's a complex question. And anyway, but I just want to lay the complexity out there, right? And be honest about what we know and don't know.
But it's the same with everything. We really don't. Yeah. We don't. I mean, we have wood, and we're still trying to figure out. There's so much. We haven't perfected anything yet, right, Dave? We're
every day we're learning on this site. Never, And
so we should never really think, even if we have standards. Those standards are just reference points, and measurement helps. And doing a lot of different things helps, because then we can track at a little finer detail the data that's useful. So
not one size fits all, and I encourage people to make their own decisions. I'm a big proponent of
that's why local matters, because when we have local opportunities, we can make local decisions, and it makes better sense. It's just easier. We don't have the same risk for supply chains and everything else, and we have local knowledge, and there's really something to be said for local talent working with local materials, because the result is somehow I think more valuable to a community, and that's the kind of thing we don't get as much these days when we're buying everything off a shelf that came maybe 5 miles, maybe 5,000 miles. We don't know.
I love it. There's a shirt, right? G-Pod America, locals matter. I love it. All right, Jennifer has one last comment here. Feels like there is room for straw bale construction and cordwood construction called stack walling. We, on our journey, ran into a Discovery Channel show, which our daughters got to work on in Montana, and it is a process called stack walling, using cordwood and using the earth. Not even clay, just using the earth, mixed with some of the Portland type cement products. It's actually really amazing. So yeah, there is definitely room for that. Look at that. The big guys on. Dave, concepts like the one Lisa has outlined offer alternatives to address housing affordability. So, Lisa, that is Greg Ugaldi. He's a regular attendee on the show, and he comes on our show. Get this, Andrew, did you watch Monday's show?
I didn't, but I'll record. It's recorded. So for everybody that doesn't know, all of Dave's shows are on YouTube, so we can catch him when we miss him.
You didn't watch the show. That was a big show. So Greg Ugaldi was on, and the head economist was on with them. So I'm not going to give you the details, but guess what? They said something about offsite construction that has not really been said publicly on this show. So Mr. Dietz, he's the head economist for the National Association of Home Builders. He's on all the news channels. He's in the White House updating Secretary of Housing, and so is Greg Ugaldi. He's the one that updates the president in Washington, D.C. on what's changing. So it's always great when these guys join in. If you didn't watch that show, shame on you. And if you don't know how big it is, it's big. We're looking at a great 2024 for alternative builds and offsite construction and different ways of building. So Lisa, I think this fits right in. Just like Greg said, there's some real viability there. And you just had somebody that's way up the ladder just say that on the show. So cool. All right. That's it. I'm going to bed, man. I've been up forever.
Get some rest.
Those red eyes. You know what the problem is? I don't have enough frequent flyer miles to have the really nice, comfortable chairs.
Yeah.
In the back of the bus.
I know. And I travel a lot, man. And I always seem to be like 15th on the upgrade list. I mean, there's some people out there just live on planes, I think. Which is not good for the footprint. I know the carbon, not good. Mark would frown.
We need medics like you in the back of the bus, Dave, to help out, so we have to distribute. We can't have all of you up in the first class.
Right.
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You know how many times I'm in first class? Very rare. Very rare. All right. Well, listen, Lisa, don't go anywhere. Andrew, you don't go anywhere. There will be a coffee with Dave. I got to look at the hockey schedule, but it will happen sometime tomorrow morning. I promise you. So there will be a coffee with Dave, a coffee with Dave, coffee and hockey. Maybe I should do it from the hockey rink.
Yeah.
We'll live stream my daughter's playing ice hockey. So. So join us for that for sure. Next week, we are in Denver. We are at ECI in Denver. So we're back at another trade show. This one's at a beautiful hotel. So I'm really looking excited to it. And we just got done with a shoot at Tovey Modular in Ohio last week. And we're going to be releasing some of that footage here coming up in the next few weeks as well. And that's some really cool stuff. AR, VR, virtually building everything with Google goggles and all that. I'm in love, man. I'm telling you, I love what I do. Lisa, you were awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And Andrew, I don't know, Mark better be careful. He may get bucked from the seat. You know, we keep this up.
I can't. There's no way I can compete with Mark. Mark's the guy. So you guys, thanks for letting us all join. And Lisa, you're a great guest. Thanks for showing us what you're doing. It's really important topic, really important work that you're doing. Congratulations on it.
Are you coming to the International Builder Show, Lisa, in the end of January, beginning of February?
Las Vegas.
Sounds like I should.
Say yes.
Yeah, you should. Definitely should. Definitely should.
Yeah, listen, we got a big push. You know, a lot of people are coming on board. They're the ones that help us make the policy change. And if we're not at the table, we don't have a voice.
There you go.
That's what I tell everybody in this industry. So the world is changing, right? So if you're not at the table, you don't have a voice. I say that about politics too. You don't like what's happening, you go try and sit up there.
Think it's easy? Go ahead.
Yeah, I bet it's not. I bet it's not. All right. That's a wrap, everybody. Lisa, Andrew, stay right where you're at. Everybody else out there, have a wonderful weekend. If I don't see you on Coffee with Dave, enjoy your family. Spend time doing what you love. And then come Monday, we're going to get right back at it because Monday's a great day. That's when we start building it all over again. Let's build it better. I'm Dave Cooper. We'll talk to you soon. Bye now.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.